Hello, this is Mr. Bernard speaking, and I'd like to show you what my interest is, what I like to do outside of school. So, um, first of all, zoology. Zoology is a scientific study of the behavior, structure, and physiology, classification, and distribution of animals. I like to emphasize the study of the behavior of animals, specifically herpetology. Herpetology is from the Greek word herpene, meaning to creep. It's a branch of zoology concerned with the study of amphibians, including toads, frogs, salamanders, and newts, and also reptiles, including snakes, lizards, turtles, tortoises, crocodiles, and alligators. So at home, what I like to study, or I like to do in my spare time, is take care of one reptile in particular. It's a Burmese python. And in particular, this is an albino Burmese python, which means albinos Burmese pythons have red eyes, and they're very sensitive to light, and they have a very light yellowish white pattern. They like to stay warm. The temperature has to be kept about 85 degrees on average. It cannot go over 95 degrees max, and definitely not below 75 degrees. 75 is way too cold. Good average is about 85 degrees. So I use a heat lamp on the top, a 100-watt bulb. So I'm going to show you how to care for a Burmese python in particular. 100-watt bulb on top, and I keep it on most of the time, but you have to have some cool parts of the cage. The cool part of the cage will be on the right side over here, near the water bowl. Warmer side on the left side over here. I also have a rock that I created, an artificial rock. So my python can go up on top of the rock, get closer to the heat lamp, and if it gets too hot, it goes off the rock. The rock was made out of a styrofoam ice chest. I cut it in half, cut a hole in the front, act like a cave so you can get some privacy and shelter. And I covered it with a mortar and dye mix. On top I have a warming pad. It doesn't get very warm, but warms up maybe 80-85 degrees or so. So if he needs to warm up some more, he'll crawl up on top of the warming pad. On the bottom we have an aspen mulch, which is the best thing to use on this type of arrangement because it absorbs a lot of the humidity and it's easier to clean. On the top here I have a humidifier. This is an ordinary baby humidifier, and I can control the humidity inside the cage, and ideally you want to keep the humidity around 40 to 60%. And if you look over here, you can see my temperature gauge, and you can see the humidity right there. Humidity on the bottom, temperature on the top. Oh, excuse me, temperature on the bottom, humidity on the top. So you want to keep the humidity about 46%, temperature about 85 degrees. Okay. The aspen mulch will absorb a lot of the extra humidity, so I don't have to run the humidifier all the time. Now when shedding, you have to have two types of rocks, a rough rock and a smooth rock. So depending on which type they need, they can rub off the dead skin, hopefully in one piece on the rough rock or the smooth rock. This particular Burmese python tends to shed more like a lizard. It'll shed off in patches instead of one entire piece. So we're trying to fix that and correct that problem with the humidifier. Humidifier will help solve that problem. They have to have a water bowl in the back, the cage. And the water bowl has to be changed about two times to 3 times a week, about every couple of days. You want to always have fresh water in the cage for your Burmese python. So Burmese pythons are tropical reptile, and they will eat mice. Mice have a special cage I use for the mice when I go pick them up at the pet store, at exotic pet store, and he eats about 1 mouse a week. 1 mouse a week. Now, when I open the cage, there's a screen underneath this wooden yellow plywood, and that helps keep the snake inside so he doesn't go through any of these spaces right here around the lamp. So the yellow plywood acts as a barrier. It also helps keep the humidity inside the cage, so I can keep it more humid, keep it warmer inside the cage. Now this python, it's a good idea to wear gloves anytime you open a cage, just to make sure, because sometimes they get confused when feeding time is and when you're just going to go in there to clean the cage and handle. So I've got this Burmese python trained, so I use a newspaper, and all I do is put the newspaper and tap him a couple of times lightly on the head, and he's been trained so he knows it's not feeding time. Okay, and if I want to feed the python, I don't use the newspaper, and I just hand him his food, and he knows it's feeding time. So he knows it's not feeding time as long as I tap him on the top of the head with that newspaper very lightly. And that's basically how you care for a Burmese python, and that's what I like to do when I'm back home after school in my spare time, and study herpetology in particular, which is basically a branch of zoology. Okay? Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video, and this is Mr. Bernard. Thank you.